Welcome to Credible Sources. Recently we sat down with members of Parliament Khemraj Ramjattan and Ganesh Mahipaul, also Economist Elson Lowe, on the passage of the $47.3 billion supplementary budget just a few days ago. And why is it that after 2 years of so much money being pumped into the economy, persons are still hurting economically?
It expresses the exorbitant spendings that we are having from the government without the accountabilities that we would like to see. Look, with over $590 billion or thereabouts, probably more, almost $600 billion, this government can't to get anything right. The infrastructure is in the worst shape it is in. Dams and conservancies and drainage and irrigation not working in any efficient manner. Construction that is supposed to be completed by now not being completed. I understand in the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, the monies that are spent there are supposed to be spent has not been spent. It's only 51% of the monies have been invested. And that's a crying shame, you know. And what happens down the year when you haven't gotten almost 50% of the money spent is that it will be wildly spent, so that you will say that within the 31st of December you have spent your monies out. That is rule of thumb, big corruption. And then to come here to say that the monies we had given you in the budget plus the first financial paper, you come with a statement stating that you had to get into the contingencies fund, which is for urgent and unforeseen circumstances. Well, that is crazy. I believe that the PPP just want to spend it, and they know who and who to give this money to. It is a lot of friends and favorites and family members. Take, for example, they did not want to come with a supplementary for a whole set of monies, and under the contingencies funds here, you can see them spending $1.7 million as additional resources for the support of the Linden Electricity Company, and just using the fact of a certain increase in gasoline prices and diesel prices, and not literally giving us all the facts surrounding that, as when asked by David Patterson and some other members. And also again, these other figures like $740 million provisional for drainage canals, dams, revetments all across the regions. And when you are asking the question of the Minister of Agriculture, he seemed to feel that it should be in confidentiality. It should not be given. When we ask him, I would like to know the contractors who were awarded these various contracts for the revetment in the various regions. He says that it is public knowledge. I don't know where to find that set of contractors. And this is where, in even the supplementary paper, which is where you normally come to get the funding prior to spending it, in contingencies, they go and spend the money and then get ex post facto approval. Whereas you come normally by a supplementary, and then you will get the monies and then you go and spend it. And look, it is $44 billion they come under this financial paper number 3. And they are saying that they want this money on the 5th of December so that they can spend it out by the 31st of December. Now that's a lie. This PPP knows how to deceive. When you come in a supplementary saying that you want the monies for this and you want the monies for that and all of that, you want the monies for tourism and industry, you want it for agriculture, you want it for finance, we only got how many days? 26 days to go for the end of the month. You collected the money today, meaning you have the money there today. When are you going to find whatever contracts and whatever it is that you have to procure, whether it's services or goods, to spend it out before the 31st of December? And so I am very, very concerned. It's troubling, it's worrisome as to what they're doing with this money. And when you ask people, oh, they love to say, like the Minister of Public Infrastructure, Warner Jill, he starts propagandizing with his 1,000 roads we are building. And last night when he started calling off some of the names of the roads, none have started. And it would appear none have been completed. And so when you ask him now, I want the 1,000 roads to be named with the 705 contractors that were awarded these roads to come up to whatever is the big amount that he asked for, he says it's public knowledge. And I don't know where in the public I could go and get that. And this is your parliament. You're getting the money as a matter of parliamentary approval. And now ministers are not wanting to give the information. This stinks to high heavens. And it is my view that there is massive corruption. The PPP is creating a lot of contractors, giving them monies, and like we know, that happens especially with infrastructural works, where the design and the actual estimate as to how much it would cost, you never really could know the ballpark figure, but it is way out from the ballpark figure that we are observing. And so there will be plenty kickbacks for purposes of having a treasure chest, so that when elections come, you got enough monies from the boys that you would have given contracts to. And this is shameless. $500 and something billion, $44 billion, paper number one, and now $47 billion. We had said that there's a lot of monies, that 500 and something billion dollars at the budget time. Now you have two additional, more than 40 billion, and I don't see how it could be spent before the 31st, just a couple days to go. But you know, the important thing too is that we will constantly in the opposition banging them to get these statistics. They're supposed to know where the money has gone because they're the ones spending it. They are literally spending the money. So it is easy for them, and they get everything digitized, all the contractors, all the awardees of these contracts, and they should make it public. It is also, as they heckled me when I was asking my question, oh, Ramjattan wants these contractors for the purposes of doing his dossier on the apartheid emerging state, the emerging apartheid state, because I guess in truth it is a lot of their supporters and their kind that have been awarded these contracts, and that is why they don't want us to give this names. And it is important that we bang away at them, because more and more people are going to understand that here they have this legacy left because of the petroleum deal, and now you're misspending it. Only a couple people are going to be favored. Only a couple people are going to be beneficiaries. And then the additional thing we are understanding, those few roads that have been completed on the public infrastructure, they are so substandard. In another 2-3 years you can build back all them roads. And that is the problem I have with this nonsensical approach that the PPP is getting into, you know.
As I have said, the People's Progressive Party, they are using the National Assembly as that body or as that institution to legalize their public thievery. And all we are having from these supplementary requests for additional sums of money is to basically legalize their thievery. So it is public legal thievery. When you look at that supplementary requests, you are seeing that there is nothing for the ordinary Guyanese. There is absolutely nothing to lift their living standards. There is nothing for the hard-working, tax-paying public servants. They still have to contend with this 8% slap in the face that will be taxed. And I have said before, the 8% is a shame. It's an insult. When you look at what the ordinary hard-working taxpayers will have to get versus what people like the president, the installed president, people like the prime minister, the installed prime minister, people like the ministers, the installed ministers, what they will have to take home versus what the ordinary hard-working Guyanese will have to take home. You know, if this government, this installed regime, had put in that supplementary request monies for our public servants, our doctors, our teachers, our nurses, the people who drive our country, who provide services to the people of this country, who day and night will have to think about their children and grandchildren, who get up and go to work at 8 in the morning and come home at 4:30 in the afternoon, and who have to struggle to make ends meet. If this administration, this regime, this cabal had put monies in this supplementary request for those people, then I would have said very good. They have a heart and they're conscious of the fact that cost of living is extremely high and lifting our people out of the miseries they find themselves in. They would have considered that. I would have been okay. But there is nothing in that $44+ billion requests for the ordinary citizens. You see that they have monies there for roads and so on. But I ask the same questions they asked before. Can the people eat the road? Can the people eat the road? Or can they eat the drains? Lift our people out of the nightmare that they're in and make our people more comfortable in this oil-rich Guyana. And stop parading and telling people that you're all about development when you're punishing the poor and enriching the rich.
What I would say about this supplemental budget, which is what the opposition has said, is that it is really the worst budget that we've seen, worst supplemental budget that we've seen in the country, because the entirety of the budget, or most of the budget, focuses on items that should have been accounted for at the beginning of the year. This points to very poor planning and management by the country. Can you imagine that the largest item, which is over $18 billion for the upgrade of roads and drainage, that is the largest item in this budget? Now, I don't know if anyone that lives in Guyana would not anticipate that there needed to be the upgrade of roads and drainage at the beginning of the year, what with it always being rainy in certain parts of the year. So for the government now to require such a huge sum for drainage and for roads and so on, it smacks of very poor planning, or potentially of a government that is intent on trying to steal as much as it can before the year closes out. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there is almost nothing in this budget for cost of living relief. Now, we know that inflation has been incredibly difficult this year. Food prices have been through the roof. But at the same time, the country has been making huge amounts. In fact, we've made about 60 billion Guyana dollars more than we expected due to the high oil price. One would have thought that that money would have found its way into a supplemental budget, especially coming into the Christmas season, which tends to have quite a large economic impact for the year in Guyana. So that people heading into this season would first of all be able to cushion the high prices, but second of all be able to have a Merry Christmas. But the PPP is not interested in anybody having a Merry Christmas. The PPP is only interested in friends, family, and favorites, and that's why this budget does not reflect at all the real needs that it should reflect, that any supplemental budget should reflect. Now, we've seen in excess of $645 billion spent over the course of the year. But really, the direct cost of living line item, the only one you've seen all year, is the $5 billion that was put aside at the beginning of the year, which is not even 1% of the huge number. So that's the one thing that has caused the cost of living to continue to spiral over the course of the year, not a lack of proper mitigation measures. But the second is, you can look at the public servants issue. If the budget, the national budget, the budget at the beginning of the year increases by 4 to 4%, how can public servants be getting an 8% increase? If we're going to spend the same share of the budget on public servants, that would imply a 4 to 4% increase. Now, we've said at minimum the public servant increase needs to keep pace with the increase in food prices over the last 2 years, which is around about a 25% increase. That's at minimum what should happen. So as a result of the government not emphasizing taking care of people's needs during this cost of living crisis, but rather spending almost entirely on various infrastructure projects and so on, we've seen it become extremely difficult for Guyanese. Now, of course, infrastructure is important, but it cannot be that Guyana is benefiting from the higher oil price, which is also driving up inflation, making it difficult for people to live. It cannot be that in a country that is benefiting from this high oil price, we are going to take a conscious decision not to help those in need in this country during this crisis. It is their money. They are the ones who collectively are making more money because of the high oil price. And that high oil price, those additional funds, needs to be put towards helping to make their life better. That works out to, as I said, $60 billion or roughly $300,000 per household. So the question that each and every Guyanese must ask the government is, where is my $300,000? Because ultimately it is our money. We have been making more money because of the high oil price, and that money needs to be put in service of helping people to navigate this crisis, a crisis which is happening all over the world, but we are fortunate enough that we've actually benefited in terms of our oil revenue from the high oil price.
The money is going to the wrong places. These monies are being given for what is called, as I understand it, largely for contracts and also to service the spendings of the various ministries and the departments and so on. What we need more for people to stop hurting are cash transfers in a very direct way and also very regulated and accountable. That's not happening, and the food prices are going up, the fuel prices are going up, and for the farmers, the fertilizer prices are going up. And so all across the board, you have massive hurting as a result. The public service workers, their 8% have been literally dissolved as a result of the inflation and the high fuel cost and the high food cost and so on. And so that is why people are hurting. The management of the resources is what the PPP is failing, and they don't care anything. They don't mind doing certain infrastructural works which are going to be in the billions and tens of billions of US dollars. Look at that gas to shore thing. And now we heard of a geologist saying that this thing could affect our water supply system in the aquifers. You understand? But they don't mind. They're saying that it will be finished by 2024 December. And they didn't even do a proper design or environmental impact assessment. So they're throwing their money on big projects, and we don't know properly whether these things are going to be economically feasible and all of that. We don't even know the arrangements, whether we're going to get the natural gas, if it's going to be free, or if you got to pay for the natural gas and all of that. And these things, when we ask in Parliament, we are not getting answers. So it is a combination of unaccountability, a combination of frenzied discrimination in the way transfers are, the little transfers that are happening, because even when they said they give fishermen and farmers certain monies, it's only certain farmers and certain fishermen, and some people in the fishermen category are not even fishermen, and this is what is fishing up the place, as it were. It is a stench, and the PPP creates it because, of course, they got so much money there now, and secondly, they feel that the opposition then they can do anything that they want with the opposition. It is not going to last long, because people, because of that mismanagement of the monies, are going to get very angry, and that anger is going to then get people to be agitated, and the agitation can take us to a place that we don't want to be.
Because the money is going to friends, families and favorites of the PPP. Is F and F benefiting, and the entire country is being F'd up. Families, friends and favorites. The ordinary people are not getting it, Sherrod. The ordinary citizens of this country, they are not feeling it because cost of living is going up. Their salaries are not moving. Their disposable income remains stagnant. And the ordinary people, the masses, the majority, the people who pay taxes, who pay the rightful amount of taxes, they ain't feeling it because they are not a part of the PPP's friends, families and favorites. The people, the masses, are not within the F's of the People's Progressive Party. Sad, very, very sad.
That many people were looking forward for the first oil budget, because we must recall this is the first time that any government has had direct access to oil funds to spend. Many people were looking forward to a more bright budget, but that is really the opposite of what we've seen. First of all, in terms of cost of living, as I've indicated, but even things like education spending. Now, we've had the government come out and say that they intend to spend 20% of the national budget on education. But can you believe that between the last year and this year, last year being a year where we didn't have oil revenue to spend, and this year where we do have oil revenue, the share of the national budget spent on education has actually fallen. So you have to ask yourself, what are the government's priorities? You finally have access to oil revenues, and you're spending a smaller share of the budget on education than you were before. That to me is utterly ludicrous. And so I think that across Guyana, people are starting to get a very good idea of what is the PPP's priorities, and the priorities is friends, family and favorites, not the average Guyanese. And I would even put it to a different way. Let's say you're a staunch PPP supporter. What evidence is there to indicate that the government has any interest in the cost of living woes that the country has faced, even while the country has been making huge revenues? What evidence do you have? There's no evidence of that. It's been minimal measures that we could have implemented without oil, and as a result, all of the money is going to the friends, family and favorites. Now, I know that many PPP supporters do not know the senior hierarchy of the PPP personally, and so it would seem to me that you are not going to be benefiting from all of these oil revenues.
That's all we have for you this time. Thanks for viewing Credible Sources.